Welcome to 4C's One Family, where expats, immigrants, and migrants can share and learn about life experiences abroad. I'm your host, James Thomas, coming to you from Taipei, Taiwan, and I'm so glad to have you traveling along with me on this journey, and welcome to the show. Look, I rarely have a good friend in the studio here. Rarely. I don't have that many friends anyway, but I'm doing my best. But I'm lucky today to have Qin Windham in the studio today. Say hello to everybody. How you doing, girl?
Hello.
How you doing? I'm so happy to, after all this time.
All this time, it's been a few years.
Is it that long?
I think so.
The last time I saw it was on MRT, right?
Yeah.
He was like so undercover, like, I don't know this dude. I come over and he's like, who's the guy? Oh, it's you.
Just randomly running into you. Yeah.
Randomly.
Completely random.
It's for real.
Taipei is a little too small sometimes.
It is. Isn't it true? Now, I always like to start off with, we start off lightly before we get into the other stuff. But tell everybody, where are you from? Where's home originally from?
Home. I am from Dallas, Texas, in the USA.
In the USA. Everybody's going to Texas now, right?
Well, your money goes a little bit longer in Texas.
Get out of here.
Yeah, it's a little bit far. Like, you get more for your money in terms of housing. The cost of living is lower, especially compared to LA and New York. And a lot of those big corporations, like their headquarters are moving to Dallas, Austin, Houston. So
yeah, a lot of the big podcasters are like making the jump. Girl, she comes in here with her Instagram phone, right? And she's like waving to her Instagram. I was the host of this show. I was.
You are.
I was.
But, you are.
But okay. So you're originally from Texas, and it's get it right. It's Dallas.
Yes.
I keep saying Austin because
well, Austin's great too, but Dallas is home.
I'm from New York. She's lying. Okay. And it's really interesting how I first met you because you're an athlete. You're 800 meters, right?
400 hurdles.
400 hurdles. Well, I ran the 400.
Yeah,
right?
we talked about that.
You see, that's called Yuanfen in Chinese, right?
Right.
Let's talk about a little bit about your background because you're not a typical foreign nationals. You're what they call them Blasian things, huh?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
I'm Blasian.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So my maternal grandfather is Chinese from mainland China.
From where? Where in China?
I believe like the Guangdong province.
Okay.
I'm not entirely sure. I never met him. He died when my mom was a young kid, so never got to meet him. It's always been like, oh, this mysterious Chinese grandfather.
Right.
So I'm a quarter Chinese, and my Blasian side.
How do people in Taiwan react to that when you say, well, I'm happy? What did they look at you and say, okay, yeah.
They're really shocked at first. They're like, oh my gosh, wow. Like, and then they kind of embrace me a little bit more.
Cool.
Yeah. So it's pretty interesting because when I'm back in the States, a lot of people will be like, oh, I can see it in your eyes, your cheeks, or my hair. But here it's like, wait, really? Wow, tell me more. And then I go into everything about my name and how everything, and then also like my language background and learning Chinese and traveling. So
it's so cool.
That's just like how it all started.
What's your Chinese name?
My Chinese name?
Yeah.
Qin.
Qin.
Yeah, 特别的特, 钢琴的琴.
Yeah. 特琴. Yeah. Can you play the piano by any chance?
Yes, I can.
You see, your mom's had some insight on that before you even got here.
She did. I think she planned it. Like picking out my name. Also, like my twin sister, she has a Chinese first name also, and then our middle name is also Chinese. My mom's maiden name, Hing. So, like more of my name is Chinese than it is American.
Well, this is cool. And more and more people with your similar background are really, they're finding more about their other side of the culture, which is important always to find about your background.
It is. I feel like through my studies, I've been really driven to learn more about Chinese history and the culture and everything, which it was awesome being able to go to China the first time.
Yeah.
That was like, that was 10 years ago.
10 years, no, you get old.
Yeah, I'm forever young.
Talk about, so you said you went to China, right?
Yeah.
Where'd you go?
I went to Beijing for a language program for study abroad. 北大。
北大
Yeah.
我是北京师范学院的。
对啊。
It's not too far.
No, it's 很近. It's
Right,
very
比较近
close.
啊。
Yeah. So it was really cool. Just like I always wanted to go to China during like in high school because at Green Hill they did summer travel programs and one of them was China every summer with our Chinese teacher. And so we didn't have the chance to go in high school because we were so focused on summer track and competing at the highest levels. And so it was like when I got the chance in college, I was like, yes, I'm going to go. I'm going to go and do like a summer program. I had to be in Colorado I was on a track scholarship, so I had to.
And Colorado is the place to be, right?
Yeah, like I had to be there for the school year. So summer was the only time I could do study abroad.
Did you do much research before your trip? I mean, I got roots there, but
Yeah.
how much research did you do?
Well, I feel like I had a lot of background knowledge from like history classes and culture classes that I had taken for my degree. But then I did a little bit more about Beijing, seeing what sites to see. And then also the study abroad program, they gave us a lot of information on like what was included in the program and how to prepare for our trip. So I felt pretty well prepared. I didn't have any culture shock going there.
No culture shock.
No, I felt pretty comfortable. I was a little shy at first using my Chinese with the locals. I was back then. I'm not shy.
Okay.
That look on your face.
Take myself off camera this time. But it's good when you get to spend time and do research to some place, especially when you find it has some roots to you and stuff like that. And how did people, especially when they found out about your background, and you said that you felt priorly, you felt they actually embraced you a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah, but was there any side that they could not embrace of you? That's a question that I always ask.
Interesting. Well, being in China and also in Taiwan, there's that division, whether you're local or foreigner. So it's like, yeah, I will never be completely a local. It's like,
yes.
I will always be a foreigner.
Right.
And so there's that. But like when I traveled around, like even like the most remote places in China, people like when they realized they could talk.
For example, where would you go?
Oh,
you can go
Fanghuang.
Fanghuang. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like the only non-Chinese person there, like Southwest China.
I've been to places in China where I've never seen a black person.
Yeah,
I said,
exactly.
This poor little kid, I said, everybody else looks like me.
Yeah.
I felt guilty. You're good.
Well, I mean, like I've been to, I think it's about 45, 50 different cities around China. Because 2012, 2013, I moved to mainland China, like Southwest Guizhou province.
Oh, goodness. Guizhou.
Yeah.
But the food's good, though.
The food was amazing. A little too spicy for me, but it was. That's the only weakness that I have.
Okay.
Is I cannot tolerate spicy food.
Okay.
But yeah, living out there for a year, I was able to travel to so many amazing places. Got to see a different side of China. Everyone talks about Hong Kong, Shanghai, Beijing, Shenzhen, but going to like the remote areas was very different. It was so awesome. And the people, like when they realized that I could speak Chinese, they were like, oh my God, I have a million questions. And just rattle off like 10 questions. I'm like,
and they're on different dialect too that you probably like,
oh my gosh.
What are you talking about? Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Like the first month I was in Liupanshui. Like that's the city I lived in. There is no airport. Like I would have to take a train 4 hours east or 4 hours west to get to the airport. And just being in that city, it was gorgeous, mountains everywhere. But that dialect was something I was not prepared for. So I'm so used to the way people talk in Beijing and Shanghai. But when I got to Guizhou, I was like, say that, like, 再说一遍. Like, I use that, I was like, say that one more time. Say it again. Like, simple things like the numbers, they said it slightly different with a harsher I, like the R sound. And a lot of characters sounded almost the same. And it was just, they literally would just switch the tones. And I was like...
That happens a lot.
It does. And it's all regional. And so maybe about a month, 2 months in, I could figure out I could move with no problem. But then meeting other people from different provinces.
Yeah, you have to fix that.
Oh my gosh. I remember there was this one guy from Sichuan. I was hanging out with my Chinese friends.
You mean?
No, my Chinese friends.
Okay.
In Guizhou.
Okay.
And they had a friend that had visited them from Sichuan. And so I was like, I cannot understand a word he is saying. And like my friends had to translate from Sichuan Hua to Guizhou Hua for me to understand. And then they would translate back. I mean, well, he could understand me with my dialect.
Right.
But
the way they hear it on television.
Yeah. And the way that he spoke, I couldn't understand
I'm going to cut you off a little bit because I'm getting Crystal here. I had to get your name straight here.
Okay.
So,
hey, Crystal.
Crystal, I'll change that later when I do the show, pre-show and go back.
And hey, Money. That's my cousin.
Look at you got your peeps here.
Yeah, Money lives in Virginia.
Wow.
That's my cousin.
What time is it over there?
Well, if it's like 9:30 here, it's 9:30 a.m.
Oh, that's right. 12 hours.
In the East Coast.
Thank you for joining the show.
And then Crystal, she's in the Philippines.
Oh, so she's pretty close to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, but going back to the language thing, because China is so big and stuff like that. You also know language differences here. But just going to something about your journeys there. What are any particular things that you found issues with as far as adapting? Because when people go overseas, the first time they always get shocked by something. Anything stick in your mind in particular?
Traffic.
Traffic.
Well, in Beijing, being in Beijing, just.
But you're from
I'm from Texas.
Right.
But it was just mind blowing being a pedestrian.
Okay, that's the point.
Seeing the people moving, and then the way the light signals worked were very different than back home. And so there were a number of times I almost got hit by a car because I'm like, I'm anticipating the green walking person, but then it wouldn't be a green walking person. It would be something else. And then...
See, that wouldn't happen to a New Yorker. See, that wouldn't happen to a New Yorker.
Yeah, we're not pedestrians in Dallas. Unless you're downtown, that's the only place that I really would walk around. In Dallas, we drive everywhere. I've been driving since I was 14. So, yeah, driving everywhere. And so seeing how everyone, like the masses of crowds moving in every direction, and then the subway system. Oh my gosh. Like I've been to New York a million times, but the Beijing subway system was something to see. And then especially like after the Olympics, they had increased the number of lines. They had the Olympics there in 2008. Right. And so they built like 5 new subway lines just for the time of the Olympics. Right. And those are still being used today. I think they're now up to 20 different subway lines in Beijing.
Oh, really?
It's hectic. I'm surprised. Like the last time I was in Beijing was last year, and I still remember like, I can get off at this stop and go to the university, or I can go to this place for this type of shopping, or I can go to the zoo market next to the Beijing Zoo and get these type of things. And so some things were very familiar, but I was like, oh my gosh, there's quite a few differences.
How long it took you to get to that level though? How long did it take you to get to that level? Because different foreigners, I should say expats or foreign nationals while living abroad, it takes some longer. I've known foreign nationals that immediately got into the culture within 3 months, and I know one here has been here for 14 years and still can't get in. I mean,
and then why is he still here then?
That's a good question.
Like she's still here?
I'm afraid so.
Oh goodness.
When did you reach that cusp of understanding?
Well, I felt like I had it during my first trip, and that was only like 2 or 3 months. It was only summer program where I could remember like which place to go for like the street market, or which place had this type of food, how to get train tickets. I could do all of that in my first trip to Beijing. But that's also after studying Chinese for 5 years.
Yeah.
So I had like a leg up on most foreigners because I started studying Chinese back in 2005 in high school. And so I already had a good amount of understanding.
So just do some trip up then on how you got right here in the ROC.
In the ROC. In the Bay.
Okay.
In the Bay.
That's interesting.
Taipei.
I'm in the Bay. I'm in the Taipei.
Yeah.
What kind of like pulled you over here, to come on this side of the straits?
You want the short story or the long story?
Well, this is a 3-hour show, I think.
Wait,
Go
3
for
hours?
it.
I mean, we could talk all day.
Yeah, no, we ain't gonna talk all night. No. But give me the LA version, high speed. Go.
So before moving here, I was teaching Chinese in Dallas, like middle school Chinese and PE, and also coaching. And so my mentor, he was my first Chinese teacher when I was in high school.
Cool.
And so at the time, he was also like tutoring me and coaching me and giving me teaching pedagogy on how to teach Chinese and everything. And so he had suggested just like, hey, if you really want to improve your Chinese, go to Taiwan and get your master's in Chinese.
Okay, now just hold on, because
Yes.
it is kind of weird having a black person teaching Chinese. I mean, in a lot of ways, it is. But my first Spanish teacher was Japanese.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I shouldn't even say that, but must have been a shock, huh?
Yeah, it was.
Black person teaching
Even for the parents, it was an all-girls private school in Dallas. And that same year, there was I believe she was Korean. She was a Korean teacher, Korean American, but she had born and raised in one of the Latin American countries, and then went to Harvard and got a degree in English. And so at the same time I had joined the staff, she joined also teaching middle school English and Spanish.
Cool.
Yeah. And so people were thinking she was the Chinese teacher and I was the new Spanish teacher. Like the first year, maybe throughout the whole time we were there together, like they were assuming we were each other's jobs. And we're like, no, actually, I'm the Chinese teacher. She teaches Spanish. She teaches English. So yeah, it was, we really threw parents for a loop.
That threw me for a loop. And so your mentor, bless your mentor's heart.
He's amazing.
He made you have. He gave you the right
he's
decision.
a polyglot. Like he's
cool.
a linguist. He knows. I remember when we were in high school, he was studying his 14th or 15th language.
Cool.
And it was a Native American language from the area that he was, like where he was raised. He was studying the Native American language of the tribe for that area in the Midwest.
Oh, I wonder why though.
I never got around to asking him. I could probably text him after the show and ask him.
Yeah, please do that.
Yeah.
Because maybe
I'm sure he's awake right now.
So what kind of things did he say to you that kind of like made you say like to yourself, like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to jump off this diving board and get on there.
I always admired him and the way he looked at languages and looked at people and cultures. He really... I remember in high school, he would tell us, do not apply English rules, grammar rules, or speaking rules to Chinese as a language.
Those connotations.
Yeah, you cannot do that. Like it's two completely different language systems and you have to approach it with a different mindset. And that's one thing I learned. And then trying to teach my students that, it was like very, like I quoted him. I was like, you cannot apply the same rules.
Right.
Like it's a very different ball game.
The cultural concept of a language is really important. Like I found myself a little bit in a special situation because I studied Chinese history.
Yeah.
And remember the days where you have to remember these ridiculously long
like the
Changyu, like this proverbs, and it's like you remember it, but
or
can
the poetry like from Tang Dynasty.
Goodness.
Like I've taken Chinese history, Chinese lit, geography of China
my goodness,
class.
That hurts.
Oh my gosh, geography of China. Like I enjoyed it. But having to memorize all the provinces and their capitals, that was a task. And then I remember we also had a quiz where we had to memorize all the dynasties in their time periods. And so literally on the paper, we got a blank piece of paper with just all the blanks, like for every dynasty. And there was a blank for the dates.
That's culture
and a blank, and a blank, blank for the dynasty. There's no hints.
There's no hints.
And I failed it because I got one off. Like I put one dynasty up too early and all the ones behind it were correct order.
Yeah,
but not, and it was, all of those were wrong because it did not match the year. And Yeah.
You felt dumb, huh?
I felt bad. I was like, how did I spell this? I studied hard. I did my best, but it was literally one dynasty I put in the wrong spot, and it threw all the other ones off.
Because it does make sense when you look at the language, if you right? And what I was alluding to is that you understand, if you work hard enough to learn about another language, you can get the language.
Yes.
But sometimes most of the time, when you understand the cultural usage of the language, you get to use it a lot more properly and stuff like that.
And you can understand where people are coming from and the way that they think about things.
Yes.
When it came to, like in that same class, the geography class, learning about the Hukou system, like
Hukou,
yeah, and seeing like, oh, that's why the city is arranged the way it is. That's why it's symmetrical or in this square shape. Or thinking about, in terms of the language, in America, we think about self first and then the bigger picture or others or the community. But when it came to, when I think about Chinese as the language, and it's like, okay, when you write the date, you do year, month, day. When you do your name, your family name, so that's group, and then your individual name comes last.
Right.
And then, let's see, what are other big addresses? When you write your address, you write the country first in Chinese. So it's country, city, or province, and then city, neighborhood, street.
The reverse pyramid type of
It's
style.
a complete reverse. While back home, it's like your name, and then your number, and then street name, and then the bigger units.
The bigger units.
So it's like almost a complete opposite in terms of how the culture functions. Communism, like a lot of people automatically assume like, oh, communism is bad. It's like, no, it's just, they have more of a like in China, it's a collective mindset.
Well, maybe it's just
it's the collectivism versus individualism.
Well, I can debate you on this part because it may be the model may sound great, but people screw things up.
Yes,
people screw things up.
The idea behind it. Yes.
Yeah.
So the idea behind it.
Yeah, that's a whole different, not a podcast, a whole different season.
that's a whole show by itself. Because like how people look at the world, it's very different.
Yeah.
So
everyone has a story, you know that. Right?
Everyone does.
When you got here the first time,
in Taiwan?
Yes, I'm talking about here because we love Taiwan. But when you got here, then what sticks out in your mind at this point about Taiwan? At this point,
first thing.
Yeah.
Huh.
You didn't think about that? Like
I never thought about it
because first impressions are important sometimes.
Yeah. First thing that stuck out was the convenience. The convenience of the city, being able to just get off the plane. I mean, I can read the signs and everything. But
this is not 简体字. This is 正体字.
But I study both.
I don't like when they say 繁体字. I like to say 正体字.
I study both.
Okay.
Yeah. So in high school, my Chinese teacher, he taught us traditional characters first. No, that's all he taught us.
Really?
Like, what's traditional characters?
台湾人了吧?
Like it's like really, and people ask me today, like, why did he teach you traditional? I'm like, he's a traditionalist, I guess.
I prefer
but no,
he's
like he did teach us pinyin. He taught us bopamafa.
注音符号, get that straight.
注音符号. No. He taught us that too. And again, people ask like, wait, you learned that? And I was like, yeah. I don't remember everything now, but learned that 15 years ago. And I did not start studying simplified characters until I got to Beijing.
Oh.
Like even in college, I was learning traditional characters at Colorado. Yeah.
Oh, I'm surprised that because with the influence of past influence of 孔子学院, the Confucius Institute
it
and
was
stuff like that.
Sponsored by them too. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So it's, I don't know. And so
you and I both are going to
I didn't learn simplified characters until going to Beijing the first time, and then went back to Colorado and had to revert back to traditional. And I'm like, oh, great. And then actually after that, I was studying classical Chinese my senior year in college.
Did you read 红楼梦?
Honglongmo.
Oh man.
We studied Dao Shui, Dao De Jing,
Dao De Jing,
like translating directly from like those books. Yeah.
I don't think they're translatable. After you read it the first time, you'd be like,
well, the first semester we had to, the teacher was teaching only like the grammar of classical Chinese. And then, so we like had this anthology book where it was four of the main cultural texts for China. And like, there's no English anywhere in the book. Like all the commentary was all in modern Chinese. Good. But then up above is what you were translating and reading through. And it was so interesting, but quite hard. Yeah.
It sounds like fun.
It was fun.
This is
I still have the book.
A linguistics class.
It really is. But it took my understanding of Chinese culture and language to an even deeper level.
Yes.
Yeah,
it happens in all language. You learn more about certain African languages and stuff like that. When you get to learn a little bit about their literary part of them, you get a different insight of people. Now, you land here in Taiwan. Most likely, you probably landed when it was like 90-something degrees here.
Oh my gosh! Beginning of September, I was dying. I felt like it was so humid. It reminded me of like Houston, New Orleans, and Florida combined together, like the level of humidity. Like Dallas is not dry, but not humid. But getting here, I was like, I'm used to heat, but this is a very different type of heat.
You're a different kind of piece of toast out here.
a soggy wet toast.
Soggy wet toast. Oh.
Yeah, that's how humid it is. Just walking down the street, you're already like drenched and soaking wet. It's like, where's my fan? I need air conditioning.
Yeah, it's true because I have different kind of roots here. But I remember when I returned I had a big afro and
oh my gosh,
it was like
my hair was much longer back then too. Really? It was just like to my shoulder. Yeah,
Take it
was
off.
just this summer I was like I just need to cut it off.
This summer was crazy.
This is my first summer like spending the entire summer here, so it's just like I don't know how I'm gonna handle this. This is it's hot.
I'll tell your Instagram fans, press that.
Yeah, we're on Facebook.
Press that button.
Oh, click the link.
Click that link.
Watch us on YouTube instead.
Watch us on YouTube, okay? Okay. Now just dial back a little bit. Now you're here. You took the time to meet people in the community. You know? How was that trip, meeting the Taiwanese? Of course, because you are unique in many ways. Beautiful, well-mannered, educated, smart lady.
Thanks.
Right? Which is frightening to some people. Which could be frightening. How did that go? I mean, how did you have to take any extraordinary steps, or your beauty just brought people to you? How did that happen?
I did have to take some steps. Well, I came here and got my I was a student when I first came here, so half of my class were Taiwanese and half were foreigners from all sorts of countries. And I did not get my master's in Chinese. I did an MBA instead. And so
you going where the money is, huh? Okay,
I mean, I'm not sure if I'm doing much with that degree right now, but
she winked her eye. I got a photo of it.
So the first Taiwanese people I really interacted with were from my campus and my classmates. And so working with them in a classroom setting was different than just going around the city and just talking to people. It was different. Like all of our major assignments were group projects, and they intentionally would put 2 foreigners, 2 Taiwanese people together. And our classes were in English and our presentations were in English. And so learning to, I have a big personality. And
Really? Really? Okay, big personality.
Yeah. And so sometimes I would have to step back and just be like, hey guys, what do you guys want to do? Because I'm always eager to we got a great project. Let's here's my ideas, and everyone just be like, okay, we'll do what you want to do. And I'm like,
maybe they were afraid to say no because you're energetic, and we're gonna talk more about that because you like getting things together. We're gonna talk more about that, but you're really like, okay, just do it. I mean,
I am. And
if there was time to go into combat, you'd be the first one to pick up the bayonet and ready to fight somebody, right?
Well, like my dad said, if there's a will, there's a way.
Oh.
And so when I want to do something, I go after it and just do it. And so like whenever I had ideas for projects, I would just blurt it out. Like the first semester, it was just like they were always like my teammates would always want to do what I suggested.
Would that be expected because you being a Westerner and most part of you is Western? They would say, well, Westerners are like that. They're aggressive in this way. Do you think that?
I think that's kind of how they saw it a little bit, but also like over time learning more about their culture and just being more agreeable. Just like, okay, we'll just go along with it. Why not?
You said being more agreeable. You weren't agreeable? You said
no,
being
I'm
more
agreeable.
Oh, okay.
But like Taiwanese people, but Taiwanese people tend to be more agreeable.
Back, yeah.
They don't want to rock the boat
Right.
or, go against the grain in a lot of cases.
Right,
so
right.
when it came to a group,
in some cases, though.
it is changing. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's changing for the better. But like when it came to group projects, they just agreed and were. Well, I think part of it was also language and communicating in English. A lot of my Taiwanese classmates were quite a bit more shy than the Western foreigners. Right. And so and you could see that among other groups too, where it's like, okay, the foreigners had more, they interacted more in the classroom. Like when the teacher would ask questions, like foreigners, we would be the first ones to raise our hands or have the discussion, like if it's a group discussion. Right. And Taiwanese people, like
that's because of the education system. Because the education system more here is
not a discussion. It's like, okay, teacher says this, you do this, and do it. This is the way you do it, and that's it. Right. You don't question the teacher. But all of our professors at NTNU, they all were Taiwanese, but they all studied abroad. And so their English was very good. And we even had like a visiting professor from the States. He taught one of my classes for a semester, and that's like, he was pretty cool. Yeah.
While in this situation, did you ever come across certain comments, not malicious, but comments where you felt you had to kind of like clarify or help get a deep level of understanding of the comment they made? Or
I feel like I do that quite a bit. Like in terms of that setting and as a student.
And no one called you bad names. But I mean, students,
not to my face.
To your face. But students have a little bit more range of, how would you say, willingness to work together than people who are not in that type of environment.
They have the willingness to work together, but one thing I noticed was that like we had a line group, like a group chat for the entire, for our program. Okay. So like all of the students, we had a group chat, and that's where like they relay messages about upcoming events or projects due, things like that.
Did your small teams have also?
We had small team line groups too. Line is the app here in Taiwan. Not like online, but literally just Line. And so... I realized. Well, I mean, it's for the people back in the States. They don't know what Line is.
Your peeps.
Yeah.
Okay. Crystal's still there. Okay, go ahead.
And so it's like we had one big group for everybody, but then I learned that there was a group for only the Taiwanese students, and they would talk about different things or talk about people in that group, and not really speaking their mind in class or with foreign.
Did you take a look in that group? I mean,
well, one of my best friends, she was in the group. Somehow they accidentally added her. She was the only foreigner in there, and she told me about the group, and she was telling me about some of the things that were said.
But don't you think that's a kind of expected from certain people?
I think it's expected in terms of the language wise, because they were only like speaking or texting in Chinese.
In Mandarin,
yeah, that's fine. But when there were things that they should have said to people in their face, that's where I kind of had an issue. And it's like they're trying to save face maybe, or they were afraid to say things to people. That was one thing that bothered me. And it was like one particular course.
But you said bothered you at that time. Am I correct?
At that time,
but
yes.
But would you feel now when you take a look at it in a respite.
Retrospectively?
反想了,
反省。
你现在反省. But would you think now then you can kind of like be more forgiving of their...
I am.
Yeah, you see the difference, right?
There is a difference. But I mean, in a way, it makes me second guess people's... if they're really being authentic when they are being nice. Because
yeah, of course.
Yeah, because everyone says like, oh, Taiwanese people are so nice, so kind. And that's very true. But how much is it just because they were trained that way, or are they genuinely nice and kind?
Can you talk about a specific issue then, or you could change the names just to protect the innocence?
In terms of being nice, and
in terms of coming across situations where someone behind
I can talk about one of.
Yeah, you can change the names to protect the innocent. I don't want to get sued.
Okay. Well, I was in a group for intercultural communication. Like that's the name of the class.
Yeah, okay.
Like, and we were assigned a project to create a video that explains why intercultural, cross-cultural communication is important. And our professor, she showed us some videos where, like, of what students did in the previous years, where it was like they created their own script, and there was like some miscommunication based on Chinese or English, and it was like, okay, these are kind of cool. And it was like a competition between the teams because it was going to be shown at the conference that our department puts on every year.
Okay.
And so within our group, it was one guy from Mexico, a guy from Spain, a Taiwanese girl, and then another girl from mainland China.
Okay.
And then me. And so it was like, okay, it's pretty diverse. Cool. And so we got to brainstorming and everything like that. And after maybe our second meeting, it was like we kind of, like the two girls, they were all on board for the idea of like doing a scripted video, almost exactly what the teacher showed us.
Okay.
And then for me, I was like, let's do something like a little different. I don't want to exactly. And then one of the guys, I think it was the guy from Spain, he had suggested like, he showed us like reaction videos, like people reacting to things, whether it's like reacting to a video clip or reacting to food. And we were like the guy from Mexico and I were like, wait, we like this idea. Like, this is cool. And then after talking some more, we thought everyone was on the same page. Like, okay, like the two girls agreed, like, yeah, okay, this sounds good. Let's do this. And we picked topics like dating, food, standards of beauty, like how they differ between Western society and Taiwan. And so those were like our main topics. And we were like, okay, each person, let's find images or things from our culture and then bring it back to the next meeting.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sounds cool.
That's what we agreed on. Even in the line group, we confirmed and then confirmed the next meeting. And then the next thing I know, one of the other girls, they sent a message sent a whole script for the video. And we're like, wait,
didn't we?
Yeah. Is this what this wasn't what we had agreed upon. And so the guys, they had, like, for me, I'm like, I didn't respond. I was really upset. I was like, how are we doing this now?
Yeah, right.
And then the guys, they were messaging just like, hey, I thought we had agreed on this. And I let them handle it because I was like, the two of them the other two girls from Taiwan, from mainland China, had decided to do this. And we're like,
what do you think was the impetus to have enough of gumption to do something like that? I don't think it was in this particular situation.
Well, after having, it wasn't necessarily gumption.
Okay.
It was more so.
I was going to use another word, but I don't want to say that on this.
Well, it's just that, like, for me, I'm going to just go to my response and then I'll explain what I saw. So I waited to respond the next day because I was just like really bothered and really upset. I was just like, let me come back to this tomorrow because if I respond now, I'm going to hurt their feelings. And so I ended up writing like an essay worth of like almost a half page like Word document response to what they did because it was a lack. Like one thing I've noticed, it was like being in that program, the foreigners, I feel like we were making more of an effort to adjust, to be more understanding in terms of working together with Taiwanese people. But we were not.
It was a mainlander too. So,
yeah.
Okay.
But I'm talking about more of my classmates too.
Okay.
Where like we're learning about Taiwanese culture. We're learning more about how they work together and like working in groups. Like for me, I'm like, okay, I learned like, let me step back a little bit. Let me open the floor. What do you guys think about this project? What do you guys want to do?
Okay.
And the first semester I didn't do that.
Okay.
But after that, I realized I was like, okay, let me open the floor to them and have them voice their opinions first. And then I'll be like, oh, I like that idea. Maybe we can add this onto it or something.
Okay. This is smart.
Yeah.
Because
they're not going to combat or like, they don't want to create any conflict.
So
yeah, they don't want to ruffle any feathers. But I don't know if it's being worried about like hurting my feelings if they don't like my idea or agree with it.
You slowed down.
Yeah.
You slowed down.
I had to really become aware of that. And I didn't feel like the two girls in my group at that time, they did not do that. They did not consider like what they did not consider the entire context of what they were doing.
This reminds me of something too, because I was in a situation where I went to a friend's house, it actually was a restaurant in Hualien, and his ama has a restaurant, and she gave me something to eat. I wanted to use kuaizi, chopsticks, but she gave me a fork. And I'm like saying, I see those kuaizi over there in the corner. But she gave me a fork, and she told me straight up, and she said, we don't have chopsticks. And I'm like,
wait,
I looked at my homeboy. Right, I looked at my homeboy, and I said, why is she lying to me?
Yeah.
Right. But then I caught myself, and I said, wait a minute, I get it.
She probably assumes that
she assumes that this Odoa, cannot use chopsticks. So for me to make things more convenient for him I'm going to tell
being considerate.
Right. And you see, this is the interpretation that I learned that sometimes.
Because sometimes, like we have our initial reaction.
Right.
And you're perfectly entitled to have your reaction, to feel however you feel like initially. But a lot of people, like you said, slow down and consider like, okay, put yourself in their shoes. Like, oh, actually, this is a generous gesture. Like, and who knows how many other foreigners she had handed like chopsticks to, and they didn't know what to do it, and then end up asking for the fork anyway. So maybe she was like, oh, I'm saving myself some work, and I'm just being considerate. Like, let me, like you're not from Taiwan.
Trouble for you.
Yeah, exactly.
So isn't that weird though?
It is.
But you see, this allowed you to be that flexible, and unfortunately, it's hard for me to tell sometimes people that, it's hard for me to tell some people that I know that learn a little bit about the culture you're going to spend time in. But it's also like, where do you start? Yeah, but the thing is, like, they feel it's going to take too much of their time.
No, I mean, nowadays, with the internet, it's super easy. You can always find like little checklists with like things to do, don't do, be prepared for this or X, Y, Z.
Yeah, I'll put a link to one of mine in here too.
Yeah, like there's so many things.
From the way you dress.
Yeah. Or how you sit, how you greet people.
How you stand in front of people.
How close you can be to people.
Which hand you use to eat.
Yeah. Whether slurping is okay while you eat or not.
Yes,
like
that's okay in Japan.
Yeah. The louder you slurp, the more delicious.
This is good.
They found it. Yeah.
So it's really weird. I mean, I don't want to take too much of your time, but it's just so much. But let's talk about something that's a little bit more sensitive and also has to deal a lot with some of the popular, mostly negative events taking part in the world. And this is and I'm going to refer to some things that are going on in our home nation.
Yeah.
And I can't not have a black person here and not talk about what happened to George Floyd.
Yeah.
And how the rest of the world is reacting to it, or how the BLM music,
You're getting tongue-tied today, man.
Black Lives
Are you nervous around
movement.
me?
Yeah, you see.
No, you can't be
It
nervous.
ain't my fault. but you know,
can't be
this
nervous.
BLM movement or initiative is now seen abroad. Now,
Yes.
I'm personally caught in the little middle of things, and I'll explain that in a few minutes. But what comments are you getting from people here in Taiwan? I mean, I didn't mention something here. The listeners here, the people viewing this, they already know that you are go after in person.
Yeah.
And you do a lot of organizing of events here in Taiwan.
Yeah.
You
A lot of different things.
A lot of different things, quite diverse things. And you've done something great in the past couple of weeks, and it has to do with Black Lives Matter to make it more wearable, understandable to the Taiwanese people. What kind of questions do you get from the Taiwanese regarding this movement or initiative?
Well, one is like, what does racism look like here? Because it's not the same, or it's not showing up as the same as back home. Like things are more like lack of awareness or understanding of our culture, or how things could be racially insensitive or culturally insensitive, really. Yeah, it's just like questions. There's a few different ones, because some people still believe, here in Taiwan, think racism doesn't exist.
But what is racism in a particular language carries a different connotation to another, right? And this is hard to...
It translates differently. It carries different meaning because of the history behind it, or lack thereof, because the Black history here is very different.
Oh, yes,
in terms of Black Americans. But you can't forget or ignore like the indigenous people here.
Yes.
So that's a whole nother issue, but similar. There are some similarities because they are seen as a lower class than the Han Chinese like blood.
And this is something that all cultures have to face.
They do, because
and this selective amnesia is bad.
Yeah, and the colonization of land has an impact, and people tend to forget history. It's like you cannot ignore history, and because everything that happened in the past affects today, what we see today, what we're dealing with today.
When I hear people say, "Don't forget history," I get reminded of don't forget who gave you the history, because there's a lot of things selective that's not in history.
Selective amnesia.
Yeah.
Yes,
and I'm picking up because I have I have my co-host on the other show of Taiwan Blend. He's really into a lot of helping the indigenous population, and
the winner of the war tells the story.
That's it.
And it's like you have to understand what lens the story is being told through,
right?
And what filters, because a lot of things get left out, get forgotten,
even our own Black American history.
And so it's you got to understand that the history still affects today. You cannot, why is the system the way it is?
Right.
Why do we move this way? Why do we act this way? And that's one thing I've been pondering and contemplating a lot about, is just why do I like this? Even some of the most simplest of things, why do I like strawberries so much?
Oh, that's really philosophical now.
I know. Something as simple as that can go really philosophical. Why do I wear my hair the way I do? Or why do I dress the way I do? And it's okay, what standards am I trying to please?
Pronounce and... Yeah. But then...
what type of standards am I living up to? Or if I'm I don't like that standard, then what am I going to create for myself? Because I want to create, let's erase these other boundaries. Let's draw some new ones. And this is, and I'm talking about just for me personally.
The road less traveled?
Maybe 10 million roads to travel. And I get to pick which one on whichever particular day.
You're going to take an endless trip. So what
Well,
references?
that's what life is.
Yeah.
It's an endless trip until we die, right?
What kind of references do you make then to help make the definition of BLM or related issues more palatable to the people here in Taiwan?
Well, one, I just want people to keep talking, like keep the convo going.
Even
like,
if they don't agree with you.
you don't have to agree with me.
Okay.
Like, I have my opinion, you have your opinion. Whether we state facts to back up those opinions, that's fine. But it's the fact, like, let's be able to talk to each other. We're all people. We all have feelings. Let's talk to each other like we're humans and that we care about each other. You don't have to like me, but I hope
It'd be
that
better if you did.
yeah, it'd be a little bit better. But I would hope like you would, one, respect me, respect what I say. And you can disagree all you want, and I will disagree with you respectfully and with love. But just getting people together to have the conversation, whether it's online or in person. Well, I prefer in person. Like, I'm a people person. I like talking to people, meeting people, and like seeing you in person, give you a hug.
That's
you
why
know?
I'm glad you're here. Just talk a little bit, because this I always get hooked up into this. We know how powerful social media is and how disturbing it can be with
when it's taken advantage of or manipulated. Yeah.
How do you feel as it pertains, particularly here in Taiwan, some of the social media that's being floated around here in Taiwan? Do you think it has a special type of flavor that differs from back home?
I feel like it's a little bit more open in terms of being able to talk with people from so many different backgrounds. And yeah, there would be some people who disagree, but I feel like I can talk to more people. And so, but still, like, social media tends to be an echo chamber based on the algorithms and everything. Yeah. So it's hard to find a lot of people that disagree with you.
But you see, you said something very interesting. You feel you could speak to more people where people here... you get more
from different countries.
Yeah, because everyone's in the same boat. Like everybody's in the same boat. Oh, the expat community, we're in the same boat. We're different anyway, so we might as well let it out. That's our commonality.
It's like we all chose to come here.
And that's the difference. And you're like the fifth person I know who said, I'm a little bit freer speaking here than I am back home.
Right. I can be more of myself because, well, one, I mean, why?
Because we are all different here. More. I mean, we're back.
It's a little bit more diverse in terms of, there's some diversity back home. Like, I'm surrounded by people from different races back home, but it's still
more separated feeling.
It's still a lot of American ideology and American, like, customs and traditions that a lot of people act the same.
Oh, because
like meeting people I've met, like, just like in my master's program, I had friends from Gambia, St. Lucia,
all over
Poland, Russia, El Salvador, Honduras, like all these different places,
all in the same pot,
in the same classroom, and then Taiwanese people too. And so it was just like,
the added flavor.
Yes, add the spices. Yeah.
Wow, that's so cool. I mean,
I learned so much from different people. Like, I remember sometimes a few friends of mine, we would go to the Family Mart that's right on campus and get some beers and everything, just sit right outside, and we would just talk about all sorts of, like, debatable topics and issues, politics, religion. Like, one of my friends,
without getting into a fight,
no fight ever. Like, it would get heated. Like, we're trying, like, no, like, are you hearing me? And things like that. But it was just like.
And how many different languages you dealing in? Right?
Mostly English. Okay. But I mean, one guy was from Honduras, another, my friend from Russia, a couple Taiwanese people, like. So there was probably 5 to 10 languages sitting at the table, sure. But I mean, we spoke in English mostly, and there were topics just, I remember my friend Fernando, me and him would always disagree.
And hug before you leave.
Yeah, we'll be like, same time next week? Sure.
Yeah, beep, beep, beep.
Well, we would be just sitting there eating snacks, drinking, and then it'll be like 3, 4 a.m. on a Tuesday or Wednesday, and just
I don't hang out with these people.
And then we'll just do it again like the next week. And that's one thing I value the most is like, we don't have to agree. You may not have anything to say. Some people didn't have anything to say sometimes, and that's perfectly fine. Just like, let's talk. Let's bring our ideas together. Yeah.
Just then add it on a little bit more then, because I'm a proponent in trying to get people from my hood out and to get them more involved and
more exposed
to travel.
More.
Right.
Yeah. It's hard.
It's hard. Well,
like I tell people about my travels and they're like, oh my God, I wish I could do that. And I'm like, you can.
You can.
It really is like which trip was it? When I moved to China, mainland China in 2012, it literally was like a decision I made. And then I was on the plane in a month. I was just like, I want to go to China.
And how did your family feel? People in your family?
They were, my mom, she worries about me all the time.
Oh, okay. And she's watching. Sorry.
She is watching. Love you, Mom. Love you too, Dad. I know he's watching too.
But he ain't saying nothing.
But my family has always been very supportive. They encouraged me to travel. Like as kids, my family, we traveled all throughout the US. So that's my first exposure to traveling. Like I've been to, I think it's like 42, 43 states so far. But then my first like overseas trip was Beijing. And so my mom worries, but she's like, I'm happy for you and everything. And then Dad's just like, do it. Like, awesome. So yeah, always have had a very big support system from friends and family. And so it was, a little nerve wracking the first time.
But what do you feel that you can do to get more people, especially people who look like us, out? I know there's a lot of restrictions. A lot of people.
It's all about awareness and education. Like if you, it's like, does the caged bird know that it's caged?
That's right.
Right. And then it's the same rhetoric about the American dream and like, oh, America's the best country. There's those things. And then how other countries are portrayed in media affects how we see other countries. Like what's being labeled as developing countries are not poor.
Right. Not
usually.
What you think.
It's just like they're not at the same GDP or something.
Right. Which we know
America.
GDP is full of garbage anyway.
That's a whole different topic.
Right. That's right. You studied. You in the class.
Yeah. So it's just showing people that there are different ways of living. Like I do have a taste of America here. Like I can go to American restaurants or certain things I can find. Sure. Right. Like I can still see the NBA games online or on TV. Okay, great. But my life here is a bit better. I'm more comfortable. Things are a bit easier here. I feel like I really have created the life that I wanted for myself.
But there's a lot of people back home that say, you don't know what's going on, James, back home. You're right.
Yeah.
I don't. But all they see me.
But we stay tuned. We stay in the loop because like we have to, our lives are split between two worlds.
Yeah.
Like we still stay connected with family back home. I call people all the time. And I'm in the news. American news is shown everywhere in the world. So it's not like I can, yeah. I mean, like I do not like watching the news.
I understand.
But things pop up on my news, like my timeline on Facebook, Instagram. Friends will text me like, oh my gosh, did you see this?
Happened, yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I kind of can't just put my head in the sand and hope that everything gets better. But it's like
we're stuck in the middle sometimes.
We are stuck in the middle.
Sometimes.
We're bridges. We're bridges between Taiwan and back home.
I hope so, because I'm stuck in this situation where I do understand our situation here being in Taiwan with the neighbors on the other side of there, flying there.
And the uncertainty.
And we got the F-16s flying over here. And we got a situation where, the presidential election is coming up.
Yeah.
And I do know the pain of friends and family back home, but I'm stuck out here in Taiwan, which a place that I made home. And I'm going to have to make a decision in November.
what to do.
Yeah. And we got to do it.
We do.
We just got to
Thank God for mail-in ballot. Hopefully they make it on time and make it there.
That's true.
That's, gosh.
You know, we've been here for a while, and I'm gonna have to make a part 2 with you.
Yeah, but, I'll be happy to come back anytime.
You know, let's talk a little bit before we get out of here on your relationship or your perception of the rest of the foreign national community here. How would you describe the foreign community, not only here in Taiwan, but during any of your travels?
All my travels. Well, we have quite a decent size of foreigners here in Taipei. Right. And it's nice to see the diversity. Like there's people from everywhere, but then it's like, yeah, there's not as many Black people or dark skinned people. And it's cool to see that like the other Black people that I do know, they're from so many different places. Like it's pretty awesome. And I've been lucky enough to make friends with a lot of different people and learn more about their history, their culture of their home nation. And so that's always been really cool. But there are some people who don't connect with Taiwan as much as they could.
They come with a certain baggage, I would say. That's
well, we all have baggage. Okay. Yeah, we're all human. Like everything that I've been through up to this point is my baggage, whether it's good or bad baggage. I mean, it depends. What you learn from that baggage, or if it's like, oh, I'm bringing these fond memories with me. So yeah, every person has their own baggage, has their own lens, their own way of seeing things, whether it's based on their religion, their culture, or their upbringing, you know? And so, I mean, one thing that people really should understand is like, okay, you should talk to people and get to know them better. And you can only do that if you're putting away some of those biases, those assumptions. You know, like you cannot hold on to those. And like, yeah, everyone believe in the stereotypes, sure. Or classifications or generalizations, whatever you want to call them. But you cannot assume that everyone is the same way ever. Like I have a twin sister, identical twin sister. You cannot assume that like Joy and I are the exact same person. I mean, yeah, we look almost exactly alike, but we're still two different people, very similar, but very different. And so if people look at us, if some of my friends have met Joy here, like my family came for my graduation. And so when people met Joy, they were like, oh my gosh, no, you guys are very, like, I could tell you guys apart right away. Another one of you, right? Yeah, like, oh my gosh, you guys look so much alike, but I could tell you guys apart because they can see our personality comes through physically in a slightly different way. So when it comes to like the foreigners, like I have a great friend base that has become my family away from home, you know, like we do Friendsgiving, like for Thanksgiving every year, or the Christmas parties, things like that. And so, but when it comes to interacting with locals, a lot of people tend to dive a little bit deeper into the culture, which is awesome. Like there's people who will travel and celebrate some of the indigenous people, celebrations or holidays, customs,
which is wild.
It's awesome. Great. Yeah. And then there's some people who stick inside of the foreign bubble.
Yes. Which that's another thing.
I tend to sometimes myself where, I mean, it's comfortable, you know, like it's easier to speak in English or have similar interests. But then it's like when you really get to know some of the Taiwanese people, it's like, oh, we like the same movies. Okay, cool. Oh, you like this movie? Oh, let me check out this Taiwanese movie. Right. Like I may have to read subtitles, but it's okay. You know?
No, it's true. I get it. I tell people, you know, we are all prejudiced in some ways.
We are, and that's okay.
That may be because we prefer what's familiar. But when you get racist, no, that's
when it becomes a problem. When it starts harming other people.
Yes.
Like, or putting you at an advantage to someone else's detriment, that's when it becomes a problem. And that's what we're seeing today, where it's like,
unfortunately, yeah.
well, it's still continuing today, you
And
know,
it's
where
contagious.
yeah. And it's like, you don't have to, like, in order to be successful, you don't have to step on someone's back. Like, no, like we can pull each other up more than anything. So, I'm hoping like to continue growing relationships, expanding my network as much as I can. I'll talk to anybody who talks to me. So, or I'm usually the first person that just like, hey, what's your name? Let's talk. Yeah. Like, what are you doing here?
And I bet it's going to happen right after the show. You get on the MRT, they're going to say, were you on that bald head guy show? But, I really want to thank you very much for spending the time with us here.
No, thanks for having me. Like, this is fun.
We have a lot more in common than we think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just the human needs, the things that we need in life. I mean, we all need food. We all need water. We all need a house to stay in and clothes, Yeah. And we all just want to feel loved. I think that's what everyone wants out of life, is to feel known, feel loved, be remembered, Yeah. And if we get past like, these bipartisan things, or like, our national boundaries, these are all man-made creations.
Yeah.
Like these are things that we created. People in the past created to create some differences for their own selfish
protection or
need for power, things like that. And it's like, no, like
it's a construct. Yes. Yeah.
These constructs are very limiting, and it keeps us from connecting with people on a bigger scale. Right. People who don't look like us or act like us. Like
sound like us, even smell like us. Who knows?
Yeah. We gotta find a way to connect better and remember, like, let's talk. Like, if we just get to talking with people,
maybe we can experience each other's pain sometimes.
Yeah. Sympathy and empathy.
That's the key.
It all matters.
Before I'm going to ask everyone on the show this last comment. And what advice would you give to those who are thinking about making a journey that similar to yours?
Yeah.
Thinking about seeing what other people think, or how other people live, how other people breathe, how other people do this and that. What advice would you give to those people, or those who are currently on their life journey someplace in whatever part of the world? What advice would you give to these type of people to either encourage them to get out of their safety zone, or how to better adapt to the host nation they're in?
Be comfortable with being uncomfortable. It's okay to be uncomfortable, but try to dissect it. Try to like analyze, like, why do I feel this way? Why do I feel uncomfortable? And it's okay to feel uncomfortable. And then the other advice is just do it. Don't be afraid. There is, like moving to China, moving to Taiwan, like both of those big moves, they were pretty big. And there was a little bit of like uncertainty and like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like when I moved to Guizhou, I had completely misread the temperatures and everything, thinking like, oh, it's going to be quite warm when I landed. In September, it was already like 50 degrees Fahrenheit. And I was like, I did not bring any winter clothes. Like, it was so bad. So it's just like, you like do your research. Yes, do your research, but you can never be prepared for what you're actually going to experience. And taking that risk, I got the biggest reward, being able to see so many different places and learn about different cultures, continue practicing my Chinese, like it's all just going with my feeling, following my heart. Because if I had listened to certain people, it's just like, no, you should stay here with us, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, I have this feeling. I have this feeling. I'm like, I kind of miss being overseas. I like traveling. I like the adventure. Life is an adventure by itself, but when you're overseas, it takes on a whole new meaning. So just do it. But also know that you're going to be uncomfortable sometimes. And that's okay. It's okay to be uncomfortable. When you're comfortable, you're stuck.
You're stuck. Yeah.
And I don't like getting too comfortable, because people we tend to get complacent if we're comfortable. but
It's like sitting on the couch,
yeah,
eating your potato
like
chips.
that's easy. I do that sometimes too, but then I'm like, and I'm content. Content is great. Complacent, no. And to me, that's the two different meanings of comfortable. I'm like, okay, I'm happy. I feel good versus like, let me just be lazy and just complacent. Let me not go for the next goal or the next thing.
Challenge yourself.
Yeah.
You know, I want to thank you again for taking the time out of your day and
thank you.
filling us into your schedule. And I'd like to thank those of you who actually took the time out of your day. Some of you waking up early in the morning over there in the U.S. And remember, we have a lot more in common than we think.
Yeah.
And if you have any comments, please leave a message right down below and click that little red little button over there and maybe give me some suggestions on who we should get on the show next or the topics we should cover. For now.
Thank you, James.
Oh, I'm glad.
Thank you for having me.
For 4C's One Family, I'm James Thomas and
I'm Qin Windham. Thanks for having me.
Take care and 再见.
再见.
I'll get this off somehow. Bye-bye, y'all.